Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Black Advancement. I am your host / moderator, Ajiman Jasante Goodman, Yana Ali, Daisha Ali, Greg Goodman, to the left, as usual. And today we're going to talk about Do Not Pass, prison and its impact on the black community. This is a part of the Justice or Just Us section of our topics within our website. Before we get into the actual topic of the day, we'll go over what Black Advancement is. Black Advancement Incorporated is a nonprofit organization that focuses on combating problems within the black community through discord and also actions. Today we'll be discussing Do Not Pass, prison and its impact on the black community. This topic kind of came about, at least the heading for the topic came about because of my favorite board game, Monopoly, where everybody knows you can learn a lot from Monopoly. You can make a lot of money, you can learn investments and all that stuff, but you can also learn that if you make one wrong roll of the dice, you can go to jail. But it seems like we roll the dice and we go to jail far too often, and it's kind of weird how this pipeline works itself out, and we're here to ask the question of why this happens and whether it's all us or it's a ploy against us and how that impacts the black community. So with all that being said, I'll throw out the first question, and Deanna, I'd like for you to start with this first. Does the black community benefit more than it suffers from the use of prisons in America as currently constituted? Why or why not?
I would argue that the black community does not benefit from going to prison. Neither does any other group, but I think that we are disproportionately going to prison. African Americans only make up like 13% of the population, but we make up a very big population of those who are incarcerated, especially our black males. And so it affects the black community in a very big way.
I would suggest that it does not impact us in a positive way, that prison breaks up the familial structure. It has people incarcerated. People are not being led into like positive images because they see that the people that are supposed to be leading them, they're incarcerated. I feel that when they are going to prison, it is for a lot of nonviolent issues. It's a lot of drug-related issues, where in other suburban cities or things like that, the same kind of drug offenses would probably be tossed out. So racially, it does affect people of color, African Americans, differently.
Greg?
Definitely doesn't help any of my people, I can tell you that. Especially, like they said earlier, black males. And the whole system is built around finances and fear, essentially, because, there's prison is basically a profit organization, I have to say. It's all about profit, and they're profiting off of the stigma and fears that they have for black people, which is why we're picked out, and our neighborhoods are watched more closely, because there's just as much drug use in white communities as there are black communities.
That's true.
But we're 4 times more likely to be locked up for those same charges.
But what would you say to somebody who says that you should lock up the criminals in these neighborhoods regardless of the color and if they happen to be?
Absolutely, as long as it's
Which
justice served on both racial counterparts.
Mhm.
Like, if it is equal, if you're going to commit a crime, of course there are consequences for those crimes, but it needs to be on both counterparts. Both parties should be held responsible. Both should face the same punishment.
But I guess that's the genesis of the question.
Yeah.
Is more so saying why. Go ahead.
Well, the whole thing is, most of these people that are getting locked up it's mostly drug charges, which goes through the war on drugs, but they're not going where the drugs are all the time. It's only focused on one group when there's just as much drug use in the other party. So that's where the fear comes in. Plus, when you're not looked at as human, pretty much, black people aren't looked at as human if they're singing or dancing or playing a sport. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So
With
regards to the drug problem, it depends on where the drug happens. All of a sudden, heroin is an epidemic. Our president of the United States currently is recognizing that heroin is an epidemic and allocating in his proposed budget federal funds be allocated to heroin prevention programs and such. And so now heroin is being decriminalized and seen as a legitimate health problem, which it should have been all along. However, back in the day, African Americans were the people who were criminalized and sent to jail for their heroin addiction instead of being sent federal dollars and state dollars for that same drug. And so it just goes to show that certain communities will use or do the same thing, but there'll be different outcomes. And ours was going to prison while others was getting the help that they needed. So treat us fairly.
I mean, do you think that there's a justification for having more police in the black community, though, based on the crime statistics?
Well, if you're gonna base it on the crime statistics, you would have to say that. But the thing is, the statistics are skewed because there's more police in that community. So if you're gonna go by statistics, absolutely, that makes sense. But if you're going by actual crimes, then it makes zero sense because there's just as much crime other places. It's just exposed more in the black community.
I do feel like crimes are overrepresented in the black community. When you look at the news, you'll see that crimes happen everywhere, but it's always highlighted inner cities, heavy black populations. It's like, I feel like the media like overrepresents, and they're essentially conditioning the general society to look at black people this certain way so that you lack empathy and sympathy for these people, so that the treatment they receive, that you don't feel bad about how they are treated.
It's all fear propaganda. Like I know a lot of white dudes that are semi-racist, but every person of color, I can't even say semi-racist, they're just racist. Let's be real. But every person of color that they know, they like. It's the ones that they don't know that they lump into that group.
Of.
So it's more of a thing, and it's the same thing with the police. It's a relatability type issue.
Not
a
you,
lot
Johnson,
of times.
right?
Yeah, exactly. The main barrier is they've taken the police out of other communities and put them into this community. So they don't know anyone anyway. So it's already a level of uncomfortability. And then, you know, whether you're black, white, or whatever, this town has this stigma, or this inner city, this projects, whatever, has this stigma. So you're not even willing to get to know people to understand who's actually doing crimes and who isn't. Everyone's lumped in together. So whether you're good, bad, or in between, you're going to get the same treatment. And all the treatment is basically that you're guilty before anything, no matter what. Hence stop and frisk and all these other things that are going on.
Yeah, we laugh about stop and frisk, but there's also proposal of a law, well, not laughing like haha funny, but it's an irony because we also have a new presidential term, and this president wants to restore law and order. And the law and order is not being restored across equally or emphasized equally across the entire United States. But however, it's being enforced in our inner cities, which was been a code word essentially for our black and brown communities. And so we'll see how that turns out.
Even if you listen to all his policies on his so-called law and order and getting tough, it's Mexicans, Muslims, who are essentially Middle Eastern, and blacks. Nothing to do with any white supremacist groups that have supported him heavily or anything else like that.
So you're saying there's a flaw in the system?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an
Just asking.
understatement.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just finished the book of Emmett Till. The Blood of Emmett Till is actually really good. It was written by Timothy Tyson. So I'm reading, and there were riots and things that happened that white people did not want integration. They did not want kids to go to school with they didn't want black children to go to school with their white children. They didn't want black people to vote. Anybody who had tried to, there were people who lost their lives. So now that we have this system, this didn't happen too long ago. So you can't like have people have just changed their minds. These people, they're actually still alive. There's people that had these children that have these same
The lady who
ideologies.
accused Emmett Till is actually still alive.
Yeah, she's still alive.
She's still alive, which
Oh,
was.
you mean
Yeah.
that lady that lied?
Yes, Caroline Bryant is still alive.
Let's not jump to the conclusions.
Oh no, she stated she fabricated. Yeah, she's still alive. These people still have the same mindset, but because it's unconstitutional to actually discriminate against somebody, let's create laws that will maybe indirectly discriminate against these people.
With all that being said, we will also plug some of the things from our website, which is www.blackadvancement.com. One of the things that you can do if you want to be involved in some of these debates that we have, and you don't think that you have the chops to be able to go up against any of our panelists, you can go to our research section where we put in basically articles for both sides of any argument, any articles that can help you feed your knowledge in terms of of what you think you would need as far as information to be able to combat with someone else. Also, you can go to our debates tab and watch other roundtables that we've done in the past. And another thing that we're plugging this year that's going to be new this year is that we're going to be trying several different projects. A blog post, which is going to focus on poetry, and also a podcast. It's going to be called Me We. It's after this Muhammad Ali poem, which is the shortest poem like in history. So it's pretty cool.
Ali is a great name, by the way.
It sure is. Langston
Means
Ali. Wait, I'll forget it. We'll be back after this.